Yo, what's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. I've certainly had an interesting one as this morning your girl appeared on Piers Morgan Uncensored to debate a couple of leftists. And today we're going to do a little play-by-play. We're going to watch, we're going to run it back, and I'll tell you all the things that were going through my head, what I was thinking, how everything was going. This was certainly an interesting time for me. Much like when I went on Dr. Phil, Piers Morgan is like this person that has sort of circulated throughout media and entertainment all throughout my life. You've seen this man your entire lives, I'm sure. So what a surreal thing to have a conversation and be on a show talking about things that are deeply important to me whilst being live on air in the UK. Certainly really interesting. So we're going to get into that today. And of course, we have Taylor in Nashville.
Hey, happy Wednesday. Great day for a debate against two cheeky British blokes.
Yes.
On all of the topics. But yeah, I'm so curious on what was actually going through your head during this, because there were so many moments where you started to say something and didn't get to finish. And I'm like, oh, so really excited to let you unpack this.
Yeah, let me tell y'all, your girl was nervous. I woke up this morning. It was supposed to be like an 8 a.m. interview. I woke up this morning at probably like 5:30, and I'm just running things through my head. I had a little sample of what we are maybe going to be talking about. They told me slavery, reparations, and the blackout shows that were happening in London's West End, which we'll get to, and I'll have Piers explain to you. So y'all know I was nervous to do this. But we ended up going on, and I think it went off somewhat without a hitch. We're going to get into this, and then I'll tell you what was happening in the background. Let's watch.
Britain's had kings and queens for more than 1,000 years, and as with US presidents, some have been magnificent, others have been what we might now call problematic. Henry VIII, for example, had very serious issues with what would now be known as toxic masculinity. His daughter, Queen Mary, was quite fond of burning Protestants in front of jeering crowds. Similarly, the British Empire committed many heinous deeds in the context of a darker, more ignorant time. But that all happened in the past. That's how history works. None of today's royal family had anything to do with those problematic issues. So why should they apologise for them? Well, campaigners in the Caribbean nations are again demanding that King Charles issues a formal apology for his ancestors' involvement in the slave trade. They also want financial reparations from today's public purse to compensate them for their past suffering. British royals are now routinely barracked for ancestral sins on every tour that they go on, with demands that they issue apologies to Indigenous communities in Canada and accusations they've crushed the development of Jamaica. This week, the Church of England committed to raising £1 billion for reparations, even as his congregations dwindle and his churches fall apart. The exact same movement's happening across the United States, with an increasing clamour for the descendants of slaves to be compensated for their ancestors' suffering. Now, look, there's no denying that slavery was an evil stain on humanity. In fact, that's why the British Empire eventually made it illegal 217 years ago.
Yes, and I want to focus on that point really quick as he's going through his monologue. There is something to be said about these conversations about reparations and paying people for the transgression of slavery. There's something to be said for the fact that these conversations are happening in the West, and that also the West were leaders in abolishing slavery. In the UK, some 200 plus years ago, in the US, over 150 years ago. So that is so rarely acknowledged when we're talking about slavery and reparations, that the fact that we're even having these conversations is that the West was the front runner in the abolition of slavery. And unfortunately, that's a point that does not get to be made throughout the duration of this conversation, but it is a really important one. And while the two leftists on this panel will say that the West does not deserve credit for the abolition of slavery, and their argument is you can't get credit for starting something bad and then ending that bad thing, I very much think there is a credit where credit's due when it comes to the abolition of slavery, especially when we talk about the fact that slavery is still occurring to this day at a rate much larger than anything we would have imagined during the transatlantic slave trade.
But even at its height, very few people actually owned slaves. And one thing is for certain, none of the people who foot the bill today were responsible for any of it. To me, this entire narrative is regressive and divisive. How can we ever be colourblind, judging people by their character, not their skin colour, if we continue to preach that half the world's inherently evil and the other half are to blame for it? Well, joining me now is today's pack, also of the Psychosis of Whiteness, Kahindi Andrews, comedian and podcaster James Barr, and from LA, the YouTuber Amala Ekunobi. Welcome to all of you. All right, Kahindi, welcome back to Uncensored.
And guys, don't worry. I saw you guys commenting. You guys hopped in the comments on YouTube and they're like, "You're mispronouncing Amala's name." Don't worry, guys. It's totally fine. I'm so used to it at this point. I know Taylor's probably like, "I would have corrected them."
I would have. This is why I wish I could have been there as a producer, but you know, Amala Ekpenobi, it's fine. We just gotta we gotta let him know for next time.
You know what? I'll take. My name is so unique that even if you mispronounce it, I think people know who you're talking about. So, so it's okay.
Along with James, two of my favourite guests. Okay, I need you to sell this to me because I've thought about this a lot, and I understand why people want people to express regret for what happened, why they want to say, look, this was awful. I completely concur. Slavery was one of the most evil things in human existence. I just can't get my head round why King Charles should be issuing apologies for something he never did. And secondly, what difference it would make. And thirdly, on reparations, how does paying money now for the sins of people hundreds of years ago make any real difference either?
Well, because the thing about the apology is the apology really is the route to reparations. Because this may have happened a long time ago, but the legacy is still with us. You go to the Caribbean, there's no black people in the Caribbean apart from slavery, and it's one of the poorest regions in the world. And if you're in the UK, and the king is the perfect example of the ostentatious wealth, the wealth we have here is because of what happened in slavery. So people in the Caribbean are poor today because of slavery, and therefore there is a debt owed to them.
Why do you care if King Charles says, I'm sorry?
And he said it. And often, this is sort of the quiet part that he actually just said out loud. The apology is the route to reparations. So in fact, what he's saying is we do not care about the actual apology. We do not care if every white person bows down at our feet, kisses them, and says, we are sorry for the heinous crime of slavery. What we care about is that the apology is a stepping stone to reparations. And I want everybody to truly understand the scope of what people are asking for when it comes to reparations. Here in California, the Reparations Task Force that was put together to discuss these things, to discuss payment to Black Americans, they came up with an estimate of $640 billion, that's billion with a B, to be paid out to Black Americans. Now, Mr. Andrews here, who actually is a UK Black Studies professor, I believe he's the first of his kind, the first Black Studies professor of the UK, he estimates anywhere from $4 to $15 trillion to be paid out of the UK for reparations. So think about that. Think about how much money that actually is. And if every single nation that's ever committed the transgression of slavery paid that money, where would we be? And who's paying for it? Also, who's responsible for that payment? Is it all white Americans? Am I, as a half-white American, also responsible for paying reparations? And there's something to be said that in a lot of white ancestry, you're going to find people who never, ever owned slaves. And didn't we pay a massive toll here in the United States when we fought the Civil War? Hundreds of thousands of people died in the name of the abolition of slavery. And many white people living today will have ancestors that died fighting on behalf of the North to abolish slavery. Are they also meant to pay reparations because they were alive during a time where slaves were enslaved and they've benefited from the enslavement of Black people? There are a ton of questions that I have when it comes to reparations, all of which seem to go unanswered because I don't really think they care about the logistics. I think they just care about getting money, and the money will never be enough. Mind you, they will always be wanting more.
Well, no, for me, the apology is not for like a moral issue. That's so you then get reparations. That's why he won't say sorry. Because when you say sorry, you accept responsibility and you have to pay for it.
But he hates slavery as much as you and I.
It's about the debt that is owed. People in Jamaica are poor because of slavery. People in Britain are rich. And he's the perfect example of someone who is rich. It was the Royal African Company, which was started by Charles II, that enslaved the most people that look like me in the world. There is a debt owed. That wealth is with us and the poverty is with us, which is why it needs to be returned.
All right, Amala, what do you think of this? Because, look, opinions run strong on both sides. Where do you sit?
And you know what? I hate hearing myself. I have to say that every time I do this. But let's explain a few of the inner dynamics here for when you're being interviewed in this way. I am the only one who is virtual here, so bear that in mind. The other two guests are in person with Piers, and there are so many times that I would have loved to interject into what they were saying. It's, however, very difficult when you are the virtual guest. You don't know if you are going to be seen or heard. So functioning at that disadvantage plus the lag, but I think things ended up going well, so. I stand anti-reparations on this issue. I understand and acknowledge that slavery occurred. It was a massive and heinous transgression. But to think that people who never committed such a transgression are somehow responsible for the current trauma of people living in today's time who never experienced that transgression is quite frankly ridiculous to me. And to give an apology is to, as Hindi says, admit fault. And he is not at fault. He is not the one responsible for the slavery of the past, nor is he responsible for the issues that Black people in the UK or in the Caribbean or here in the US, as we're having many discussions here about reparations, are facing.
Right. I mean, James Barr.
It's important to define what an apology does and when you give one. There is a very big difference between expressing regret and saying, I apologize, and saying, I'm sorry. The UK, the government, and the royal family can express regret for slavery and say, you know what, I'm so sorry that somewhere in our lineage this crime occurred. However, to say I am sorry or to apologize is to admit fault and take personal responsibility for an action. If they do not have slaves and they are not the ones who enslaved people, there is no reason to say I'm sorry or to apologize, because that makes you culpable in the act of enslavement. And you know, Dr. Andrews, or I don't know if he's a doctor, the Black Studies professor who says, you know, apology is the route to reparations, he's absolutely right. And this is why you should not give an apology, because it does, in fact, validate the arguments that are being made in the pro-reparations camp.
Where does this end? If you take the idea that sins of the past have to be atoned with apology and reparations, do we now go to the Italians and say, right, the Romans invaded us, we want money from you people? The Vikings, do we go to Scandinavia and demand money from descendants of the Vikings? In other words, once you establish a principle of this, where does it end?
If we're going to trivialise it, then I would like to
Why is that trivial?
Why is it trivial? Why is it trivial? Is it trivial because all of a sudden we're talking about white people and stuff that they faced in history? Is that what makes it trivial? Because what Piers saying is very important. If Black people have a claim to reparations, y'all, we all got a claim to reparations. I have probably a claim to reparations on my white side for some shit that happened back in the day, and I have some claim for my Black side for some shit that happened back in the day. We would all be able to raise our hands and say, well, back in the 1400s, my family were indentured servants or something like that. And we'd be able to ask for pay from whatever system was responsible for that. And one thing that I didn't get to say in this argument that I wish I could have said is that why aren't you asking for reparations from the African nations that were responsible for enslaving the Black people that were later sold in the transatlantic slave trade? Go to them, honey. Because they're the ones who started the supply chain. They're the ones who enslaved the Black people that were later used in your colonial system that you're now asking for reparations from. Why aren't you going to the Black Africans who started this in the first place, and instead you're looking up to your own government? Because they owe you reparations too. In fact, look under your seat. We all get reparations. we all get reparations.
You would owe yourself reparations, and I think owe myself reparations as well, because I have both Scandinavian and British ancestors in my line too. So this thing collapses in on itself if you try to implement it in reality at all. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right. I'm saying, y'all, you cannot logically make this argument and think that it is sound, frankly.
I would like to talk about how the church perhaps owe LGBTQ plus people billions of pounds
for the shame that they've caused
queer people. And to be honest, it's not even a trivial argument. I think we should turn Westminster Abbey into a gay club.
Wow. Okay. So obviously he's trying to be sort of tongue-in-cheek here, but he's saying that that gay people deserve reparations for shame. So not even like an actual act of enslavement or harming somebody, but the feeling of shame is what reparations should be paid for.
I genuinely believe that King Charles should say sorry, and everyone here is saying...
Answer my question.
What was your question? Your question was that...
Well, my question is that if you assume that sins of the past, right, should be atoned with apology and reparations...
I think it's about who is...
What about marauding hordes of Romans, Vikings, and so on, who killed a lot of people, caused total mayhem,
but we also did
caused
that.
Destruction?
And we are a really rich country.
So here's my point. Where's the line for you?
I think the line is that the royal family are still profiteering off of thousands of years of racism currently, and whether it's conscious or unconscious.
How are they?
Because they own property that was built by slaves or funded by slaves. So we need to acknowledge that. We need to say sorry for that, and we need to do the work, and we need to pay that debt back.
Okay, and I'm sitting on indigenous land. What do you want me to do about it, brother? I'm so sorry. But, like, if we're really looking at this logically, this cannot work. And I really empathize with those that were not paid reparations when reparations were due. That whole 40 acres and a mule conversation that we were having upon emancipation was a conversation that should have come to fruition. But to come now, you know, over 150 years later, over 200 years later in the UK, and say that you want reparations for people who never experienced it is a little bit much for me. I'd be even going as far as to say, if you have people, black people living in the United States right now who were alive during Jim Crow, and they say, you know what, I experienced Jim Crow segregation in the United States. I had to use the colored person's water fountain. I was sent to a segregated school. Sure, let's have a conversation about what we can do about that, because you're an actual, real-life, direct victim of the legislated discrimination that was happening at the time. But baby, if you were not a slave, you don't get reparations for people who were.
I just say, look, I get the sorry leads to reparations, but the actual apology, you know, I wouldn't apologise for what my ancestors did.
Well, you should. I think, to be honest, I think everybody in this country should apologise.
Why? We never stop apologising.
Okay, if everybody in the country, if we all simultaneously go 1, 2, 3 when the ball drops and say, I'm sorry, does that stop the complaints from happening? And mind you, if everybody apologizes, the apology means nothing. Let's make that clear.
Well, exactly. But you won't apologise for this, and that's crazy to me, because this whole society.
If King Charles was found to be holding right now, and by the way, modern-day slavery is a massive problem. There are millions of people held in modern-day slavery, right? If the royal family were found to be holding people in modern-day slavery, absolutely throw the book at them, right? But they're not. This had nothing to do with them.
Piers, come on. There is a Proceeds of Crime Act in this country. The act may have happened, but the wealth is still here. That's the problem. Yes. The poverty is still here. This is not a past thing. This is a now thing. If you're saying you want to fix the problems of the Caribbean and for black people in America and here, we don't have the money. And where's the money? It's with people like the King. So you have to return the money. That's reparations.
The Church of England now says the 100 million earmarked by Church of England for new investment to repair damage caused by historically into slavery isn't enough, the report says. They're recommending £1 billion. There are churches closing all over the country, right? Vicars are being paid less and less, and there are less and less of them wanting to do the job anyway.
That's about the
conditions they're living in are getting worse and worse.
That's their fault. They're makers of their own.
Yo, I cannot express how frustrating it is to be on Zoom while this is happening and not be able to raise your hand and go, wait a minute, what you just said is crazy. I wish I was sitting on this little panel. I would have flown to wherever this show is filmed just so I could be there. I would have paid out of pocket just to be there to say, hold on, I have to personally interject in what you're saying right now.
How are we going to... So why bankrupt the Church of England?
Because all they need to do is sell one of their cathedrals. Sell a cathedral. Sell the jewels you stole. It's not difficult.
There are plenty of
How many gay people in this country live in property that may have, if you go back far enough, have been established from slavery?
I'm sure a lot.
What happens
and you know
to
what,
them?
Piers? They should
What happens to their
as
home?
I just said, I think everybody living in this country, in the UK, should apologise for the horrendous things our ancestors did.
60-odd million people issue public apologies.
I'm down for that.
And if there's any trace on any line back to any slavery, anyone's property, which can be linked back to slavery, has to be what? Given to who?
We are talking about normal people now, but we are talking about King Charles, the royal family. They have endless amounts of properties. How many bedrooms does Buckingham Palace have? You don't need all of that. Sell this stuff, Give the money back.
Royal
to the people
family
you stole
bring in.
from.
All right,
if you steal something, you give it
Let
back.
me go back to Amal, who's been listening very patiently. I mean, look, the argument about the royal family to me is a fatuous one because they bring in so much money in tourism, they wash their faces, in my estimation.
Literally.
But if you don't believe in the royal family, you don't believe in the royal family.
could give
Americans
reparations,
don't have a royal family.
So they got money for reparations.
But as anything they're saying, I mean, my problem, Amala, about this is that once you establish this principle, there is simply no end to it. The history is littered with evil people doing evil things and descendants existing today who can be traced back to these people and their evil things. Once you say we're all culpable today for what happened 300 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it never stops. We'll be in a perpetual state of what Mr. Barr's utopia is, which is millions of people chanting apologies all day long.
100%. If we are going to take this to its logical conclusion, that means that every single person who is alive today has some sort of claim to reparations. If we all look far enough into our ancestry, we will find heinous crimes committed by those who came before us against those who came before us. So where does it stop? That means white people are going to have a claim to reparations. The Japanese will have a claim to reparations. The Chinese will have a claim to reparations. This is what this means. And for some reason, we focus this just purely on black people as if they're the only ones who have ever suffered throughout their history. Now, this is not to deny that slavery has had some sort of impact that is now affecting the current state of America and the current state of UK. But it is to ask, how big of a slice of that pie is it actually? And you are now handing black people a crutch where they can blame every single thing that goes wrong in their lives
you do
on
realize
something that happened
there's no
historically.
black people in America without slavery. Like, you do realize you're not there.
Ooh, and I wanted so bad to respond to this. I can't tell you how bad, like, this is out of all the moments that I wanted to respond to in this interview, this was one of them. He says, and you do realize that there are no black people in America without slavery. Thank goodness. What do you mean? You mean I'm going to be hanging it back out in West Africa or whatever? I'm glad I'm here in America. There's this idea that because slavery was this horrible thing, and yes, I will grant an absolutely horrible thing, that nothing good came out of colonialism, nothing good came out of the West. You mean to tell me that millions of black Americans get to live in the most privileged society that has ever existed because of slavery, and you're saying that that's a bad thing? I'm not understanding. I think it's a pretty wonderful thing that slaves were emancipated and now we have a great, black population in the United States of America that gets to enjoy all the rights and privileges that this country has given to them. So why is that a bad thing that there would be no black people in America without slavery? I can understand maybe the point that he's trying to make there, but my goodness, am I glad I'm in America, even though my ancestry was not enslaved. In fact, I mean, it's quite possible. I don't know. I haven't looked into my white ancestry. They could have owned slaves. Maybe I'm somebody who has to pay reparations in this whole thing that's going on right now. But yeah, dude, I would say that's a pretty good result from the horrible colonialism that I now get to live in America. I'll take that to the bank.
But one more thought on that, Amla, is like the fact that your ancestors that came over to the U.S. were not enslaved is a testament to the fact that now in modern times, one, that completely refutes his point that says there are no black people who weren't slaves, and two, it testifies to the fact that America is a place that attracts black people because there's less oppression, less racism, more economic opportunity for them, and they do statistically do well economically in the country once they get there. So more angles through with which to slice up this point.
Yep. And why do we have millions of people trying to enter the U.S. through our southern border, many of whom are black? It's because this nation's a horrible, racist country and they want to come to be discriminated against? Probably not. They probably also want to enjoy America like all the other black people that were born here, many of whom because of slavery.
You're there because of slavery.
And you do realise that there were lots of black slave owners.
Oh my God, there were not lots of black.
There were.
The big problem with the way this conversation is going.
Did you deny that?
There were black people who owned enslaved, yes, but the profits and the money are with us. They haven't gone. You cannot compare this to Normandy. That's done. It's complete. In fact, Arab slave trade is a great example. Arabs enslaved more people, it lasted for longer, but the Arab slave trade didn't generate wealth, and that wealth is gone. So I'm not asking for...
Okay. So because they did the slavery thing unsuccessfully, they don't need to pay you reparations. Because out of the enslavement there was born success, we have to pay the reparations. So not the Africans, not the Arabs, because they weren't successful in their enslavement of people. Even though that enslavement is ongoing, like as we speak today, there are tons of slaves in Africa and people being enslaved. But mind you, not too successful, I guess. They're not really bringing in bank. They haven't secured the bag yet on the enslavement, so we don't need them to pay.
Reparations from Arabs. However, the European slave trade generated the wealth and created the poverty. Therefore, there is a debt that is owed. It's that simple.
So your answer is
lines very clearly.
you want King Charles to basically apologise and then what, to give up various palaces and sell them and give the money to what? Antigua, Jamaica, and so on.
Caribbean countries that have clear demands and they should be funded, and yes, the royal family should. Why
So
not?
you would end the royal family?
Well, you know I'd end the royal family anyway. It's a complete joke.
So that's my point.
Okay, so I
That's my
wouldn't.
point. See, and there you've revealed the real motivation.
That's a separate issue.
No, because I agree with everything. I agree with
It slipped
everything.
out. It just slipped out, Kendi.
Separate issue.
Actually, that's
Abolish the monarchy,
you want to
reparations.
abolish the monarchy,
But those two
and give
things
all
are
their
not
stuff to
mutually
the
exclusive.
Caribbean. That's fine.
Those are not mutually exclusive, Piers. You know they're not. You do not need to abolish the monarchy and...
He just said he'd do that.
I
No,
would,
that's,
but that's
yes,
not
but that's
reparations.
not what necessarily needs to happen. They don't need all of that wealth. And as you said, they bring in a lot of tourism. So great, take that money instead and sell off all of the stuff you stole.
Part of me, and I was talking about this the other day, part of me is like, you know what, just let them run wild, you know? Let them rack up trillions of dollars in debt and pay it directly to Black America and to, you know, Black English people, and watch as these same problems that these communities have been facing for ages now continue. After you've given billions on trillions of dollars to them, and none of the issues go away, then what will you have to blame? Because then you've received your apology, then you've received the trillions of dollars that you've asked for in reparations. What's left? You can't blame white people anymore after that. You can't say it's because this country is built with a foundation of slavery and racism. And when the same problems persist after you've made this astronomical payment, you will have no further crutch to lean on. I mean, but trillions of dollars is not possible to pay right now. And it's hopefully not going to happen. But if it did, watch as the same problems that have always afflicted these communities continue, and the same victimhood mindset continues, because the payment will never be enough.
But you get rid of the monarchy too, wouldn't you?
No, I wouldn't actually. I would keep it, but I would change how it works in our society because at the minute it isn't working.
On the subject of the royal family, and there's various issues I want to get to with you guys, but fascinating celebrity big brother over here has Kate Middleton's uncle, Gary Goldsmith, who's an erratic individual at the best of times. He said this last night.
So I had the opinion that Harry was really, really, really loved. Like, massively loved.
He was.
And when they were a threesome, so Kate, William and Harry, they looked really comfortable together, loved, and then suddenly there's an extra dynamic that comes in, puts a stick in the spokes, and creates so much drama that I don't genuinely think was there, and rewrote the history and said how unhappy he was. And I just don't think that's fair.
So we got Kate's uncle, Gary, dishing the dirt on the Sussexes. A certain James Barr immediately hit social media, fuming at the chat where Kate's uncle Gary talks about how Meghan came along and created drama whilst literally creating drama.
Yeah.
He added, Harry got a girlfriend and that changed the dynamic. Grow up.
Right, I do think you should grow up. Also, when was the last time Kate saw you? When was the last time any of us saw our uncles? Like,
No, this is actually so funny for me to listen to because I obviously don't know anything about the royal family apart from like the little coverage that we get here in the United States, and that's mostly of Meghan and Harry because we get their whole Oprah Winfrey thing and then their whole Netflix special and all this stuff. So it's really interesting to hear people so passionately care about the inner dynamics of the royal family. So this was, as an outsider and the only American here, very interesting.
you're so irrelevant. Please.
Would you know the answer?
What, when you last saw your uncle?
No, I know. I see my uncles all the time. I've actually literally just
Right, you
had
mean when
lunch
did
with
he
one
last see Kate?
an hour and a half ago.
Okay, great. Well, good
Yeah.
for you. But listen, Kate doesn't really pick up the phone to this guy. He's a loser. He's making up nonsense. You know, Meghan came in.
I'm like, what is the American equivalent for how they talk about the royal family? Is it the Kardashians? Like, this is how I would have pictured people talking about the Kardashians. Like, Camilla said this, Kate said this. She was photographed by TMZ here.
and saved Harry from a toxic, abusive
He
situation.
really looks like like a saved individual to me.
He does to me,
He doesn't.
actually.
He's
He
not
does.
saved. He looks
Liberated.
inherently unhappy.
I think he looks pretty happy because he's ignoring all of the nonsense that you spout about him. Good for him.
Well, he's not, is he? He's suing over most of it. So, look, Candy, you and I have debated before about what went down with the Sussexes and about the race aspect to it. But there can't be much doubt, can there, if you look at it in totality, that Harry, before Meghan came along, was existing seemingly quite happily in the royal family. She comes along. There's a huge deal made of her mixed race background, which I wrote about on the wedding day as being a fantastic thing for this country, by the way, for what it's worth, as did all the other media at the time. Then it all went wrong because of their behaviour, which I never felt was racially motivated. But there can't be much doubt that Meghan brought with her a lot of drama into Harry's life, because look at what happened since he met her.
I mean, I think, firstly, there was plenty of drama in Harry's life before Meghan, like plenty of drama. And the idea that he was happy is clearly not true. He wrote a whole book saying he's not happy, spare all this, etc. And this is one of these, this is actually where...
But he only wrote that years after being with Meghan.
The idea that this black woman comes in and all of a sudden there's drama, it's ridiculous. It's not true.
It's
He wasn't
racist to
happy.
me.
And she wanted to... That's a racist idea, right?
Do you actually categorise her as a black woman?
Yes, she's a black woman, because she's treated as a black
I mean, she has a black mother, white father. But do you think she's a black woman? Do you think people in Britain view her
they
as a
do.
black
I
woman?
think the evidence is very clear. How she was treated, how she was treated in the family, how she was treated in the press, that she was...
I mean, y'all, come on. Look at Meghan Markle. Look at Meghan Markle. Is anybody looking at Meghan Markle and thinking, like, black? Okay. And the reality is she's biracial. She's just like me. She's biracial.
was viewed as a black woman. Whether she viewed herself as a black woman when she went in, another question.
Amala-
She was certainly treated as a black woman.
Amala, what's the view over in America about Meghan Markle in particular, particularly the way she's played the race card against the royal family as the only
Americans-
non-white bride we've had in the royal family?
Not me trying to interject. That's the lag right there. Sure. I would say, for the most part, Americans are not too fond of Meghan Markle. And to Mr. Andrews, she is biracial, much like I am biracial. And we can make the argument that she's constantly going to be seen as black. But the fact is, she's a biracial woman. But I think what Meghan Markle carried with her is an idea of perpetual victimhood. She views herself as a victim because she is female. She views herself as a victim because she is black. And when you carry that sort of energy with you and you view the world through that lens, every odd look is going to be racism. Every off comment is going to be racism. Now, I can't speak to the internal dynamics of the royal family, what was said and what was not, but I do know that that's her attitude.
Yeah, see, Jane.
And and I know, because, girl, I see one when I see one because I was one, okay? I used to be a little leftist, so the little tricks that Meghan Markle is playing, I see right through you, baby girl. I can see. I literally see the cogs and the wheels turning in that young woman's brain as she spits her little victim narrative because that was me. And girl, we were both little biracial victims. So I see that 100%. Yeah, so, and you can tell that she sort of carries that with her. And I do want to say, I don't know whether or not the royal family's racist. I have no idea. Stuff could be happening within the halls of Buckingham Palace, the likes of which we've never seen before, and they could be blatantly racist. I have literally no clue, and that's important to note. But what I do know is that Meghan Markle is a little victim, and even if she wasn't experiencing racism, she would have found some way to find a victim card to play.
James, my take on it, for what it's worth, it's not a new take, you'll be aware of my view of it, but I sort of felt that they actually are both equally to blame for this, but they whipped themselves into a state of perpetual victimhood, not just from their own families, but also from the media and everything.
Well, they were being attacked by the media.
Well, they're also praised a lot. They never thanked the
only
media
at
for praising
first,
them.
and then as soon as Camilla could get her oar in, allegedly...
Camilla?
Well, the suggestion is that she was feeding the press negative stories, right?
Completely untrue.
Well, have you spoken to Camilla?
I have spoken to
Has that been
Camilla.
through legal process? Do we know whether that is true or untrue?
What?
What I just said, is it factually true or untrue?
There's no evidence Camilla has ever briefed anyone in the media
But it is
about either of them.
alleged.
Well, it's alleged by Harry.
Right, so we have to take it as an alleged offence, right? So that's what supposedly happened. So why now is the silence around Kate so loud? Because the palace have decided...
There's no silence around Kate.
Yes, there is. The palace have decided...
She had a
the
serious
news are not allowed to
abdominal
talk about
surgery.
Kate, whereas when Meghan was being
Hang on.
attacked constantly,
What's the-
nobody stood up for Meghan.
What
The
is
palace
the-
didn't release a statement at all. They said nothing, and Meghan continued to be attacked in the press. So I would argue that she wasn't playing a victim. She was a victim.
Why was she and Harry attacked in the press?
Well, that's a great question. I would argue that it was racism, but I can't.
hang on.
I can only see it through my lens.
Hang on.
At least he said he can only see it through his lens, and he would argue that it was racism, but we don't know. And I will admit, I watched her Oprah interview. I watched the whole Harry and Meghan docuseries to see what was going on, and there were some media outlets that referred, I think something along the lines of like Straight Out of Compton or something, to Meghan and her mother when they were back in California. And yeah, that would be racial stereotyping. That's not an okay thing to do. But to constantly play this card as if it is like the largest weight you carry as an individual of such privilege, of such success as Meghan Markle, who's marrying into the royal family. Come on now, okay? I get it. Tabloids are nasty. I'm sure a ton of celebrities experience that to varying degrees. But to have it as this sort of crutch of I'm going to perpetually be seen as this black woman and the royal family's racist and the UK is racist is really unbelievable, especially when you see that on a much bigger level, Meghan Markle was widely accepted when she came into the family. How many people were screaming that this is a great day for representation? I think even Piers Morgan himself said it was a wonderful day for the UK, that they get to see somebody like Meghan Markle to really unite the United Kingdom. So where there is negativity, there's also immense positivity. But a victim will always focus on the negativity.
They weren't attacked until after they got married. Right, and I know this because I was writing columns about them, praising them.
Well, so why did you change your tune? What made you decide?
I'm going to tell you. I changed my tune like the rest of the British press when, after they got married, they started behaving in a weirdly, rankly hypocritical manner. They would preach about carbon footprint and climate change. Then we'd see them getting on Elton John's private plane.
Okay, but here's that stupid.
Let me finish my point. They would.
We don't get to finish our point.
You do. They literally tweeted about the need to take poverty seriously on their Twitter.
But they have a security
on the day
issue.
she had a $500,000 baby shower in New York, and then flew back on the Clooney private jet. In other words,
King Charles always goes on about climate change. Camilla's getting a private jet on holiday.
By the way, they all get criticised.
We can all talk about
They all get criticised. You don't think Charles and Camilla have been criticised?
No, come on, Piers. You have to accept
please.
The two most criticised people in royal history were Charles and Camilla. You're not old enough to remember. You are.
I
right?
Do not
And
I remember our
and it wasn't racially
Diana
motivated.
and the crimes committed against her.
Well, how old were you when Diana died?
It was 96, so I would have been just over 10, like 10.
Right, you're 10. So you weren't old enough to know what was going down,
But
right?
it was different.
I knew Diana and I knew what went down. No one's been more vilified than Camilla in royal history. The idea that Meghan Markle got anything like the treatment that Camilla got is for the birds.
No, Piers, but I want to go to this whole fascination with them. Even when you were writing positive things, that was still about race. That was nonsense anyway. The idea that she'd come in and change the family. And when she came in and said very clearly, I want to be the face of the Commonwealth. I want to do this work, which I would have hated. In fact, I'm so happy it went badly because that would have been the very worst thing. She clearly tried and said, look, I want to be part of this family. I want to do this. And every little thing was drip, drip, drip. And this is the experience that black people have
How do you
all of the
explain?
time.
Yeah, listen to that. This is the experience that black people have all the time. I will grant that Meghan Markle did some great things when she was doing all of the stuff that accompanies entering the royal family. She also brought with herself activism and what I believe were very American woke leftist tendencies into the royal family and into the work that she wanted to do on behalf of the royal family. When you usher that in and bring in that dynamic, coupled with your racialized narrative, you're going to rock the boat a bit. Now, it seems like she was not ready for how much she in fact rocked the boat, and that led to them, cutting their association from the family, but nonetheless, that is what she brought with her. And it's not just something that all black people have to face. I mean, honestly, how demeaning to just place all black people in this box of victimhood when I'm sitting right there going, not me. I don't know who's this we, us, all black people that you're talking about, because this has by no means been my experience whatsoever.
If it's just the terrible royal family, this all-white, awful group of people.
And the media.
How do you explain she's also disenfranchised from her own family on both sides?
I think a better way of...
Now, see, this is the only point that's not fair. I think there's plenty of instances where you could have family trauma or abuse or things happening that lead you to cut off from, two sides of a family, and that doesn't really speak to who you are as a person. And we'll never know the inner dynamics between a family, which is why it's just such a difficult thing to debate about or to discuss, because it is quite literally the personal life of another human being. But I digress.
On both sides, the only member of her family on either side was her mother. She had people like George Clooney. She'd never met George
I'm
Clooney
not getting into
before the
I
wedding.
don't know about a personal situation, but I do know this family and this media. There is no.
You're blaming the royal family for the way they treated Meghan Markle. I'm saying, who do you blame in her family then? Are they all to blame too?
It's a completely
Because she
different.
disowned all of them as well.
Well, I would argue that she experienced abuse from her own family, right? Thomas Markle sold stories. Her sister is awful. We don't even need to talk.
Thomas Markle sold interviews after they threw him to the wolves.
When you've been in an abusive situation, you see it everywhere. And I think perhaps Meghan went with Harry into his family and went, OK, this doesn't seem right. And she knows.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like with her own family, she had a lot of different trouble with them, like going to tabloids and exploiting her situation. And I mean, that totally warrants wanting a little bit of distance.
Because she's been there.
Amala, in America, obviously, this is where they've got their new home. They've made hundreds of millions from companies like Netflix, Spotify, and so on by trashing their families. But that shtick is running out of steam. I mean, there's no doubt people's appetite in America and everywhere else is pretty low now for more of that stuff. What do they do? I mean, are they just like rent a celebrity now, or what happens to them?
I don't know. Maybe they fall into obscurity, although I don't see that actually being the case, because as much as they call for privacy and wanting to be alone, they somehow always end up in the press. She did an interview with Oprah. They did this whole Netflix documentary whilst saying that they want to keep out of the public eye and be able to lead their own lives with their families. They continue to complain about the racism faced in a family that they are seemingly no longer a part of. So I'm not sure where they go next from here. There will be some other victim card to play eventually, though. What? No, why did I say it like that? No, why did I say it with such an attitude like that? I need to calm down.
We love the sass. We love the sass. Yeah. The chat's going crazy.
I think it's because I have, from my perspective, I'm just sitting here listening to these two guys and not being able to interrupt. So in the moments that I do get, maybe I was a little bit less than calm in responding to them. But yeah, we're gonna skip one question here. He just asked me about like Kate Middleton and her whole surgery thing and getting photos of that. And I don't think we need to get too deep into that. Now this is where things really start to get set off. We're going to talk about the theatre on London's West End that is doing blackout shows. I can assure you we would know.
One thing that happened here, Kahindi, this producer of a West End show, Slave Play, which features a Games of Thrones star, Kit Harington, among the cast. It runs from end of June to end of September at the Noel Coward Theatre, and will have blackout events confirmed to be taking place on 2 of those nights. This is where 2 performances will be aimed at an all-black identifying audience that is free from the white gaze, and it follows a similar thing on Broadway in 2019. Now, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's official spokesman says restricting audiences on the basis of race would be wrong and divisive. I mean, my take on this was, I was trying to imagine if you had an all-white cast and you said, right, we're going to have an all-white identifying audience free from the black gaze, you would go absolutely...
Oh, it's not the same because white people have power and black people don't, and it's the worst thing ever to be a black person. Oh my gosh. I could hear it. I could see it coming as he's shaking his head. This is exactly what he's going to say. It's just simply not the same.
Absolutely
Would it be the same?
apoplectic with race.
It clearly wouldn't be the same.
Why wouldn't it be the same?
Because the problem here is if you go to some of these shows, you will find there is an all-white audience. Unfortunately, because of the way it works, some of these places, they are almost exclusively white. And so
but
what this is dealing
just
with...
advertising it in that way, you would deem it extremely racist and offensive.
So there is a problem that you have almost all white audiences, and it doesn't feel like a safe space for black audience members or cast. And so what you're saying is trying to address this problem, let's have an all-black space.
So when you go to the theatre, if you see
there's no problem with all
to be
black,
clear, when you go to the theatre...
And what I really want to say is the uncomfortable fact that if you are a black person, you know where you're probably statistically going to be less safe around other black people. If we're really talking about safety, a black person is more likely to commit an act of aggression, take your life or whatever as a black person than being in a room full of white people. So that doesn't make sense. So clearly you're talking about some sort of emotional sense of feeling unsafe. And if you emotionally feel unsafe when you're around white people, it's probably because you're racist.
And you see white people there, you don't feel safe?
No, I promise you go to a theatre and it's all black people, you'll feel away. I promise you, 100% promise you.
So now he's projecting onto Piers Morgan. If you go into a room full of black people, you're going to feel unsafe. Again, racist.
Have you ever been into a theatre and it's all black
I've been to I've been to rap concerts in America where I've been one of the few white people. Yeah,
It's different.
I thought absolutely fine, thanks.
The point is, it's different. When you go, it is.
Okay, Piers, rap god. I wonder which rap concert he's going to and drop the rapper, Piers.
I do. It's different for me. When I go into these places, it's different. It doesn't feel comfortable.
But just
It
to
does
make
feel
it,
so
in answer to my
black
question, though,
guys, it's
that's
fine.
my question. If there was an all-white identifying audience billed as the marketing that was free from the black gaze, you would say that was racist.
Because it would be racist. This is to address a specific problem. There is in the cultural sector, there is all
that
white
only
spaces.
works.
So how do you address that?
Right.
You
So
say, let's create a
racist
different
if
space.
it's to do with.
You're just minimising the importance of that conversation again. You're just making it a hypocritical conversation to cause an argument.
Or am I exposing a double standard?
No, there isn't a double
He is.
standard.
I'm actually
because one of
exposing
these-
the hypocrisy
One of
of
these
it.
groups is a minority and one isn't. And you always bang on, and I hate to bring this in because I don't want
Oh my gosh, the white ally that I'm smelling in the air right now. One of these groups is a minority. Again, it's we feel bad for black people, therefore black people can have their own spaces. If you're a black person and you want to go to the theater and you want to go to West End and see a show, you can do it. I've been to London twice. You know what I spent my whole time doing there? Going to different shows because y'all know I'm a theater kid. I'm a nerdy little theater kid. So yeah, I spent my almost entire time in London going around to different shows and seeing as many as I possibly could in places that were full of people of all different races. So it's just unbelievable to take something like the experience of theater, which is meant to be something shared across cultures, creeds, religions, races, and make it something that is segregated. It is disgusting.
to have a debate about it, but you always bring in safe spaces for women, which I completely agree with. And
Here
you
we
talk
go.
about how important that is, but then suddenly when there's a safe space for black people, you've got an issue with it. So what's going on there?
I don't understand
there's some,
why
some double standards there. isn't
theatre
there?
is
no,
not
answer
an
my question,
unsafe
please.
space.
There's some double standards.
Sorry,
in that.
you're making out that somehow black people can't go to the theatre for fear of
No,
what?
but we're having a conversation about safe spaces, and the idea is that by doing a blackout event, it will feel safer for that community.
And it's not true, and it's not a safe space. And I'm going to, at one point, go back to that argument that he makes about female spaces, and we're going to clear that up. So don't worry. There's a very valid reason why Pierce can believe in spaces that are safe for women and not safe spaces for black people that aren't actual safe spaces.
To talk
So what if I
about
want to have
issues.
a whiteout event?
They all are white.
Well,
That's
you
the
can
point.
join the Ku Klux Klan if you want, Piers. Like, you're more than welcome.
So if it's a whiteout
we
event,
go.
it's Ku Klux Klan,
No, Piers,
right?
no.
Who are the most racist group in history? I got it.
No, Piers,
So
He said it.
one way, if it's whiteout,
No,
Ku Klux
Piers,
Klan.
the point is-
if it's blackout, absolutely fine.
Piers, the point is, it's already white.
You see
out.
how ridiculous it
Piers,
sounds?
The
You
point
you
is,
see how ridiculous you
Piers,
sound.
Go
Let's
to
bring in
West End.
Amala, the voice of
Already
common
white out.
sense. Amala, I mean, just
He said the voice of common sense. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. Obviously, I'm so nervous this whole time, so I'm like, okay, whew, it's going well. It's going well. Pierce is hyping me up.
hearing these two, honestly, trying to work out in their brains, very slowly, it seems to me, the ridiculous double standard
No, I'm
of what
told.
they're saying. You must be laughing, aren't you?
Oh, I'm laughing. I'm shaking my head. To me, this is absolutely ridiculous. It is one of the most blatantly racist things I've seen in quite some time.
Look at that eye roll.
And it's quite literally demeaning to black people. How insulting that you would say to black people that they don't feel safe in a space because there are fellow white people there and they need to be safe from the white gaze. And how racist it is to white people to exclude them from being able to enjoy something like the theater. This is very reminiscent of the Jim Crow South that we experienced in America.
Oh,
where
come
you
on.
had white and colored water fountains. This is the very same reality that we are now ushering in, even though we made it to a time of progress where this was no longer an issue. We are inviting it back. It is racist.
It is not the
wrong.
same. In any way, shape, or form, is this the same as Jim Crow? What you actually...
It's 100% the same. And if we allowed this to happen, okay, let's say this comes to its full fruition and we allow all spaces to host blackout days, or we start labeling businesses black owned, or we start putting little black categories on Netflix and Hulu and Uber Eats as we are doing currently, and this continues for decades and it continues to build and build and build, it will look exactly like the Jim Crow South that we experienced in America. And guess what? White people will have a claim to a civil rights movement. That is how these things move forward. So this is not progress. This is not doing something good for black people. It's reinforcing the idea that black people should feel unsafe around white people. Like, damn, I didn't feel unsafe around them before, but now that you said it, should I? This is the kind of idea that you're setting forward and that you're teaching people. And, you know, a lot of different people enjoy the theater. And just because you walk into a room and there's mostly white people does not mean you're not welcome in the room. And it doesn't mean you're unsafe in the room. If black people aren't going to watch musicals and plays or going to the theater, maybe it's because they don't want to. It doesn't have to be because it's about racism. It is absolutely
what you
the
actually
same.
have in the minute is go to a show in the West End. It feels like Jim Crow already. It's already a white
Unbelievable.
This is an anti-racist way.
But
to
if
try and encourage
white people did this, we're the KKK.
you
says
do it
James
all the
Barr.
time.
Okay.
This is the point.
Yeah.
It's
And
not-
here's
Can I
the
just speak
problem.
from a queer perspective
Here's
for a
the
second?
problem.
From a queer, what about a
So
very
as a gay-
ignorant perspective?
It's so hard to interject when you're not in the room, guys.
As a gay person,
KKK.
it's important that I am sometimes in a space of other queer people that is just queer people, so I feel safe to be myself
You
without.
That's a failure in your thinking. If you think that you are safe just because you're around other people who like to have sex with the same people you do, like, come on, let's really break that down as to what he's saying. He feels safe because he's in a room of other people who have a different identity other than heterosexual. That's what that means. Like, when you hear it actually said that way, do you hear how little sense that makes? But when he says, oh, when I'm in a room with other queer people and it's a safe space, it sounds a little less delulu than it actually is. Like, just because your homeboy also sleeps with men, you somehow feel safe around him. It makes no sense. I don't know who fellow black people are. And quite honestly, when I go to the theater, I'm not looking around at who's in the audience. I'm looking at the show. So what does it matter who's sitting around you in the first place? It matters what's up on stage and what you are all collectively experiencing.
Straight people like me.
I would exclude you, Piers, but if you want to go to GAY with me,
I've been
more
there,
than
mate.
Let's go
I've been
together.
there.
Great. But listen, my point is, we need safe spaces so that we feel safe. And actually, you're talking about it being
We don't.
racist
feel
to exclude
unsafe
white
with
people.
me standing
Why are
there?
white people not making black people feel safe?
Do you feel
That's the
unsafe
question.
now?
That is the question.
Do you feel unsafe now with a straight guy opposite you?
Not really, no.
Do you feel unsafe with
Not really, no.
the white guy?
It's not about that, Piers.
Well, that's really weird. You know what's really? It's really weird to sit in a position where you truly feel unsafe. So why is it that you're still on the show? If you actually legitimately do not feel safe being around straight men, that is probably not the place for you and you shouldn't be in the show. Do you have no survival instinct? If you truly do not feel safe because of Piers Morgan's presence, this shows you that the feelings that they are speaking to are not real. Feelings are not fact. We cannot validate them in the same way that we validate actually, objectively true things, because he's claiming to be unsafe while sitting in a situation having a conversation with somebody while he's going to continue to sit there.
10,000 white people
I
will
do
say
feel a bit
Reggie.
unsafe sat here, actually. Yes, especially with the comments. That
Well,
we
after
received.
comparing my position to KKK,
I did not compare that. I said you could join
You
them
did.
if you wanted that. That's what I said.
so yeah, just to be clear, if it's free from the black gays, it's KKK. Free from the white gays, that's
This is an
emancipation.
This is
Right.
an anti-racist idea. This is what the whole point is, to address a problem.
It's actually, in its
That's the
own
point.
way,
That's
it's
what
just blatant racism.
It's not racism.
It is.
not racist.
It's
You can still
excluding
vote.
people on their skin colour.
No.
It's the exact opposite
People-
of what
white
Martin
people
Luther
can
King
still
said. Judge people by the
But
content
you
of their
just a minute
character.
ago, you were trying to exclude Meghan Markle.
You
from
can't
being
get
black.
more safe in a
You were
theatre
literally-
audience.
You were just
the
trying
idea
to-
that someone like Kahindi Andrews goes to a theatre and feels unsafe because he's a white person.
Piers, a minute ago, you
It's
were
really
excluding
ridiculous.
Meghan Markle from being black because of her skin colour. Now you're saying that's not allowed. So
Say
which
that
is
again?
it? You just excluded Meghan Markle for her skin colour.
That is not what he said. He questioned, is Meghan Markle black or is she biracial, given that the actual fact is that she is biracial. This like erasure of like mixed race people, I believe, is just unbelievable. She is in fact a mixed race person, and that was the point that Piers was trying to make. And the fact that he's trying to make this argument whilst talking to another mixed race person is crazy.
Like 20 minutes ago.
When?
You were saying she wasn't black enough.
No, I asked Kahindi whether he believes she's a black woman.
Yeah, she could come
Right?
to the show.
We've actually had
She could come to the show.
another
allowed.
guest.
Yeah, she's allowed,
We've
yeah.
had another guest say she thinks she's a mixed race woman, right? I think terminology matters.
Right.
You don't?
No, of course I think terminology matters, but I'm just saying you are defining someone by skin colour and then a minute later
I didn't
saying,
actually define her skin
Can I
colour.
ask a question to you, Pete?
I didn't actually define her skin colour. I asked Kahindi and I asked Amala.
Did you hear me in the background? Wow. My little things are coming out, but I'm not showing up on screen. Wow.
Agreed.
Can I ask a question, please? What's wrong with just going on a different day? You can still go. You can go on any other day.
It's not. It's the
like
point,
2 days.
The point, Kenzie, is this.
The problem?
If anybody tried in this country or America to have a white-only audience to avoid the black gaze, all hell would break loose.
Yeah.
And you know who would lead the charge?
No.
You
It
would.
already happened.
You would, Candy
It
Andrews.
already happens.
I hate this argument of it already happens. Okay, if you guys go and buy tickets to a concert or a show, and let's say you're black, for this thought experiment, we are all black, okay? And we buy tickets to a show, and we show up to the show, and it's 100% white people there, and you're the only black person in the room. This is not because of segregation. This is not because this show is somehow racist or made for white people. It's because white people happened to buy tickets for that show in mass, okay? So you're showing up to a space as a black person that happens to be enjoyed more by white people. It's not because the show is segregated and because the people who created the show are racist, or it's some remnant of slavery or Jim Crow. It's just the way the cookie crumbles, baby.
You would
Segregated
accuse them of
communities.
being racist,
Segregated
and you
schools.
would say in your normal
Piers.
virtue signaling way, it's the Ku Klux Klan come back.
Segregated
And
communities.
that's why you're both guilty of rank hypocrisy.
Segregated communities, segregated schools, segregated
And
theatres.
racism.
These happen today.
Yeah, am I-
See, because of my lag, he said you guys are both guilty of hypocrisy, and like 10 seconds later I go, and racism. That is so funny. And racism.
Carla,
It's not.
the voice of common sense on this panel?
Stop hyping me up, Pierce. You're making me blush. He said the voice of common sense.
They're guilty of racism is
Listen, I love
essentially what
white
it is.
people,
And to
okay?
Mr.
White
Andrews'
people-
point,
some of
when
my
he
best
says-
friends
when-
are white, so
when-
I cannot
when
be
he
racist
says that
towards white
theaters-
people.
Okay, here's the issue with this way of thinking.
No, I just paused and went, okay, are we done yet? Do you want to get out your little sassy comments real quick so I can continue? Are we done? Please. You're speaking over a black woman.
And you just know if that same guy heard someone say, I'm not racist because I have a black friend, he would be like, no, you can't make that argument. That's not a good thing. But if he can
He's
say, I have a
trying
white
to be
friend.
all tongue in cheek and everything and be a sassy little gay man, okay? I clocked it.
notice a disparity amongst race and you immediately attribute it to racism. Mr. Andrews says, you know, there are theaters that sometimes you go to them and there's all white people in the audience. Now, I don't know that that is actually true, but if you attribute that to racism, that is your problem. If you feel safe or unsafe in a space that contains white people, that is your problem.
I don't
It is
think
not
it's
our
race.
It sounds a whole lot like a you issue to me. It sounds a whole lot like a you issue.
I think it's
responsibility.
economically racist. I think the reason that most of the audiences in the West End are white is because of an economic problem.
But it's not. I as a black person, have attended the theater all
So
of
it's
my
not.
life.
Did you
Every
study
single black
economics?
person that has.
Oh, I love a fallacy of authority. Did you study economics? Was the retort back to that, and we'll see where we go with this.
Every black person in the UK has the very same
So why don't they?
choice to go and be in the theater.
why don't
And
they?
even if
They
it
can't
was.
afford-
It's like saying, like, you know, I don't know, let's say Meg the Stallion comes to the UK and does a concert. Where are all the white people at? Is this a racist, segregated concert? Why are there a ton of black people around listening to Meg the Stallion and I don't see any white people here, bro? It's because black people enjoy Meg the Stallion. If you look up the fan demographic of Meg the Stallion, you're gonna see the vast majority of her fans are black. However, if you look at like who wants to watch Les Miserables on London's West End, it's probably going to be majority white. Also, considering that the population, the makeup of the UK has a considerable amount of white people. Okay, so it doesn't have to be because of racism, and this is what I keep saying to them. Just because you see a disparity does not mean that that disparity is the result of racism, and you are actually never going to solve that disparity, even though it doesn't even need to be solved, if you continuously attribute it to racism. There is more often than not, I would say, honestly, 10 times out of 10, more going on than an idea that there is some racist, oppressive force happening.
Because of an economic disparity. That economic disparity does not exist purely because of racism. And to attribute it purely to racism is to ignore a ton of other problems that are existing within the black community and
can I ask a
blame
question?
white
Why
people
is it
for
then?
it.
So why is it? Because actually, you'll find in America as well, there are hugely segregated audiences for comedy, for theatre, why is that? Why is it you
They're
can
not.
literally go, yes, oh my, yes, there are. If you're saying this, what
To
country do you live in?
segregate-
That you cannot tell me right now. If you go see a comedy in a black community in America, it's just all black people. If you can go to see the same thing in a white community, it's all white people. Residential segregation.
Just
Why do
because-
these things happen?
Dude, it's like saying like, why is there a ton of white people at the Shane Gillis show, but when I go see Cat Williams do stand up, there's a ton of black people? I don't even need to explain that any further. I think you guys get it. And if you guys went, if you're a white listening right now and you went, who's Cat Williams? My point exactly.
So just because people tend to be with other people of their similar race does not mean that those shows are segregated. To segregate something is to exclude a group of people, which is exactly what these blackout theaters are doing. Just because you happen to attend a show that is full of black people or full of white people does not mean that there is some sort of segregation
Just by
actively
accident.
happening. And it is a failure in your thinking. Yes,
It's just by
sometimes.
accident.
It's actually, yes, it is by accident, but also it's not necessarily. There are actual cultural forces at play that have nothing to do with racism that lead people to be in certain areas and others to not be in certain areas. It's like saying like, it's just unbelievable. Why are there a ton of Jewish people at this kosher restaurant? And I'm not seeing any black people and I'm not seeing any Middle Eastern people. What's going on? There's not enough diversity in this place. Well, it's almost like it's something that is culturally significant to specifically Jewish people that is marketed to Jewish people, and that's where Jewish people are going to congregate. The same can be said for the existence of white culture, and yes, there is a white culture, and the same can be said for the existence of black culture. What a ridiculous question to insinuate that racism is somehow at play when you go to places that have more people of a certain race.
America is one of the most
Sometimes
segregated
things
countries in
happen.
the world. It just happens. You have these large
America's
ghettos.
not
I go to the
It just happens,
well,
right?
I go to the comedy store in Los Angeles. It's always a completely mixed race audience. I mean, this idea that everything's
course.
segregated is absurd.
Nobody said
Kindy.
everything was
Do you
segregated.
ever go to America?
I never said everything was segregated, but I can promise you there will be.
I've been to the
theatres
theatre
America which are
around
mostly
America.
black.
I've been
Theatres
to
mostly black,
concerts.
promise you.
I've been to
Absolutely
sport.
promise you.
Always extremely multicultural audiences. This
I know-
idea it's all segregated is for the
This-
birds.
This is
very
what the
misogynistic
victimhood
to use the word
mentality
birds,
brings about. You should not be
I can't use the word
uncomfortable
birds
in a
now, but
space that's full of
literally
white
I think
people.
my point
creatures,
is, like, do
because
we
James Barr's offended.
I
because
think
he's misogynist to birds.
My overarching point is, do we believe in safe spaces for marginalised communities? Yes,
No.
I do as a queer person. So I see why this is a great idea.
Yeah, but you don't feel that way, oddly, about the trans debate, do you? You feel very differently about the trans debate.
don't think women should be excluded
You
from
think
any
biological males should
don't
be
think
allowed
any
into women's
woman-
spaces without a moment's thought
I don't
for
think-
women's rights to not have
I
that
don't
happen.
think
So
any
you are a
woman-
rank hypocrite.
I don't think any woman should be excluded from any female space.
Right, but you don't mind biological males
I will repeat my
identifying
point.
as women.
I don't think any woman should be excluded
So
from
a
a female
6 foot
space.
So men, essentially.
7-inch bearded biological male says I'm a woman, you're happy with them
6-foot
going...
bearded woman should not be excluded from a female space.
Right, so you think all trans women are women?
I do believe all trans women are women.
Are all
yes.
people
Why
who
are you
put-
trying to trip
are
me
all
up?
people who-
I've made my point very clear.
Are
I've
all
repeated it
people
3
who
times.
put
I'll
their
repeat
hand
it
up
again.
and say I'm a woman, a woman?
If you
Are they?
if you officially are a woman on your passport
Yeah.
or your birth certificate, you are a woman.
That's my hit.
Ooh, but the LGBTQ community wouldn't like that. You mean I have to go through a legal process to have my sex changed on documentation before I'm able to be treated as a woman? I thought I was just able to self-identify and then go into the women's locker room or be housed in a women's prison or, just go into a women's bathroom. That doesn't sound quite right. But now you're saying I need to go through the legal process of a transphobic government in order to get my sex changed and documented so that I can actually be a woman?
That's not my question. My question
That's
is,
my answer, Piers. I'm not giving you a different answer.
Is anybody who puts their hand up and says, I'm a woman, a
Trans
woman?
women are women.
No, it
and
wasn't my
people that
question.
identify as
is
women,
anyone who
yes.
identifies as a woman
Yes,
a woman?
I believe so.
Okay, so you can identify as anything
But do you
want.
know how difficult it is to get to the point where you identify as a woman?
Okay.
Or how difficult it is to
I am
actually
identifying-
legally identify
Wait
as
a
a woman?
minute.
Do you know how difficult that is?
Let's test your
and
theory.
do you know that...
Wait a minute. Let's test your theory. I am a woman.
He just said
Piers,
legally.
you're being an idiot. You
Am
know
I a
that's-
woman?
Of course you're not a woman.
Ah.
You're not, you know you're not a woman.
So everybody
But
who
it's not the
identifies as a
same
woman
comment.
is
You're
not a woman.
simplifying something so
Not a woman.
complicated.
Right.
It's so
Safe
frustrating.
spaces. Safe spaces
Do you believe
for
in a
black
safe
people
space?
like
Do you
Gahindi.
believe in a safe space for women or
spaces
not?
for gay people
Right,
like
I'm-
James Barr.
honestly, I'm so-
No safe spaces for women.
Yes, safe spaces for women. Actually, Piers, do you believe in a safe space for women?
No safe spaces.
His very definition of a woman alleviates and completely, actually obliterates safe spaces for women.
Do you believe in a safe space for women?
Trans women are trans women.
Do you believe in a safe space for women?
Biological females should be protected.
Do you believe
and have
in
their
a
own
safe space
spaces
for women or not? Do you believe in a safe space for women?
I don't think trans women are women.
I've not asked you that.
See, he's trying to catch Piers here. He's trying to catch Piers here and say, you believe in safe spaces for women, but you don't believe in safe spaces for black people. And I'm just sitting back there in my studio with my headphones on, and I'm like, I got you, boy. I got you. I got you. Just send it over to me. Send it over. Put me in, coach. Put me in.
I've asked you if you think women's spaces should be safe for women.
Women
your answer
should be given safe spaces from biological males.
So if your answer is a woman's space should be safe for women, your answer is that a black space should be safe for black people.
No, because there's no fear for black people in a theater. It's ridiculous.
Well, oh my God, fear. It's not about fear. Like, when we say safe space, I don't think we're going to be...
It's not about,
Kamala.
Can we unpack that? Like, please, can we unpack that?
Jump in, please. You're the only voice of common sense.
Let's explain why this is the case and why Piers might believe that there should be safe spaces for women. Men function at a biological advantage over women. They can harm women. Women become victims. This is why trans women, who are AKA biological men, cannot be allowed into women's spaces. There is an actual distinct, studyable biological advantage. Is there a biological advantage that white people have over black people? Absolutely not. And this invisible privilege that we seem to give to them does in fact not exist. That is why there are safe spaces for women and not safe spaces for black people.
Sorry, that is
Whew. Said my piece there. Had to get that in. I'm glad that we circled back on that whole topic. And I just had to say that. I just had to do it.
I'm glad you got it out. We did get a $50 super chat. We read those immediately. So I'm going to read it from Daniel Craghead. He says, you are an amazing speaker and try to see both sides before giving an onion, which I think you meant opinion. Is there, though they might be crying after they hear what you got to say, is there any way you could actually debate them in person? I think I've been watching you since 2022 and I always look forward to your videos. Yeah. Thanks for all you do.
I wish, I hope, and thank you so much for that super chat and that message. I really appreciate it. I do typically go to London every year for about 2 weeks. So I'm like, next time, I don't know if he's in London, but if he is, next time I'm going to hit up Piers Morgan and say, can I get in there in person this time? Because that would be great. It'd be a fun time.
Safe spaces for women is not about physical attack either. Sometimes it is.
Actually, it is.
It's not all about physical attack.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
If we're saying you want to have a women's reading group, it's not just about physical attack. It's about more than that.
Right, the first minister of
that is ridiculous.
The first minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, literally lost her job because she allowed a biological male rapist to identify as a woman and put them into a female prison. Where they
I don't think a prison would be
honestly, this is stinking right-wing hypocrisy.
It's not right-wing.
Yes,
I'm not right-wing.
On one hand, you're saying a safe space should exist for women, but only if they feel threatened by someone that is bigger than them.
No, not only if they feel threatened by somebody. The safe space exists for women so that they never have to feel threatened by somebody who would be taking on the identity of being a woman. This is why women have their spaces. This is why women have their rights. And this is why we've separated largely so many things throughout our society on a male and female line.
On the other hand, you're saying, well, all these black people that are going to go to the blackout events, who you've not asked, by the way, clearly do not feel unsafe around white people.
I don't know
and so they shouldn't have a safe space. What are you talking about?
I've never met a single black person who says, I can't go to the theatre because I worry about my safety.
It's not about safety.
Nobody worries about their safety in the theatre.
It's not even about the theatre. It's about saying that, and I promise, as a
you literally use the phrase safe space.
Yeah, but safe, what does safe mean? So safe, let me give you an example.
What does it mean?
I'll tell you right now.
I thought it meant safe.
I'll tell you right now. There are certain stereotypes attached to me as a black man that I have to deal with in all white places. All the time. All the time. I walk in my university and people I know don't look at me because they're afraid of me.
Oh,
so it's true. 100%.
How could you possibly know that? I walk into my university and people don't look at me because they are afraid of me. Okay, think about that. So you're interpreting somebody literally not even ever looking at you as them being racist towards you. Do y'all hear how crazy that sounds? If I walked through the grocery store and nobody looked at me, I would just be like, oh, okay, nobody's looking at me. That would be a normal day. Does everybody have to like look at you and acknowledge you for there to be some sort of like safe space set for you? And the idea that you're not even getting mean mugged, like nobody's like looking at you, growling at you, mean mugging you. You're just not being looked at. And you're interpreting that as them being racist? Are we in the same room? Are the racists in the room with us right now?
And you just know if he were getting looked at, then he would have something to say about that. That would be racist as well, right?
Yep, exactly. If you look at him weird, that's racist. If you don't look at him, that's racist. If you say something to it, it's racist. If you say nothing at all, it's racist.
100% true. When I go into, and I promise you, I've been into
People who know you in
can't just
university.
say his experience is rubbish.
Read the book. It's in the book.
Let me get this straight. You go through your university and people who know you are terrified of you.
Because they don't look at me. Huh? See a black man walking down and will look down.
If I'd watched you on, if I'd watched you on TV, I'd probably give you a swerve too. I'm not doing your skin colour.
When I go into these theatres, and I go into these white theatres, you do have to act differently. You have to be different because you can't.
No, that's not. That is. I'm sorry.
We literally had somebody call the police on a black man because.
That's like me saying when I go to a Beyonce concert.
Dude, imagine you're like at the theater as a black guy and you come sit next to a white person. They're like, hello, police. There's a black man sitting next to me at this show. Be so for real right now. Be so for real right now. This has not happened. This has not happened and it's not happening.
I feel terrified because there are too many black people.
The idea that white people cannot harm black people is frankly ludicrous.
Yeah,
we see it happen all the
It's
time.
so insane that you're top of the food chain, like as a white straight guy, and you can't accept that.
Top of the food chain.
Yeah, you have all the privilege, all the power.
Literally, middle-aged white.
How demeaning to say that he's at the top of the food chain in comparison to like all the people who are sitting here listening. How do you know that? How do you know that he's at the top of the food chain? You're literally placing people into categories in boxes. Just insane.
Men are the most oppressed people in society.
How much money are you making from this
We are
YouTube channel?
literally the most oppressed people in society in the world.
Is that paying?
We are actually an endangered species.
Endangered species. This
Yeah.
is
Literally.
Before we let you go, because I've enjoyed this debate, I want to just talk about Donald Trump. So Donald Trump has just pretty much won the Republican nomination to be president again. Nikki Haley's pulled out today. I mean, Amala, she took an absolute drubbing in Super Tuesday. It's no surprise. But Donald Trump is on the march for one of what will be, if he was to win back the White House, the most astonishing comeback in modern political history. How do you explain this? I mean, for people outside America who go, how can a guy facing 91 criminal charges with all the baggage that Trump brings, with the riots at the Capitol, all the stuff that we know about, how is it that he is now storming back to the White House?
Yeah, sure. I've seen for a large portion of the Republican Party, a lot of people feel not only that he was sort of snubbed in the last election, but that he's somewhat entitled to another run here. And that's a big portion of his support. Also, a lot of people are experiencing the presidency of Joe Biden right now. He is clearly suffering from dementia. He has done nothing to stop the illegal immigration problem here in the United States, nothing to stop crime from escalating here in the States. He's fueling a racial divide and a lot of different sort of social divides within our country. And people are looking for another candidate who's going to speak truth to the media, stand up and do something about the issues that we're facing in our daily lives. Only so long can we move forward with this victim narrative while things don't change in our lives. And we have a slew of issues that we're experiencing here in the United States. And if it comes up to a Trump versus Biden election, I think a lot of people are going to be looking for the candidate who's going to solve the problems. And whether they like it or not, I feel like that's Donald Trump.
I think if it's Trump, Biden, Trump wins. I mean, Kendi, I've heard you call Trump a racist and so on. What is staggering is that his support among black voters in America has grown by 500% in the last 4 years. This is a New York Times Siena poll released at the weekend. The former president's support among black voters is now 23%, marking a 19% increase since the same poll taken in October 2020. I mean, that is truly staggering. And you see an appreciative fall in black vote support for Joe Biden. How can that be happening if the guy's a racist?
I mean, if that is true, it is actually.
What's a New York Times poll?
Yeah, and y'all should look up some of the stuff that Joe Biden has said in his political career as a senator. The over 50 years he spent in American politics, he has said some heinous things about black people. If you go and look into that, I mean, just crazy. Talking about how America's looking like a jungle because of black people and all this sort of just insane stuff.
I mean, the poll's true, but if that actually translates to the election, I'll be very, very, very.
But how do you explain it?
Well, I mean, this is part of the, talk about white men being the most oppressed. I mean, it's a perfect example of why you can be a mediocre white man and keep coming back. I mean, Trump wasn't just a racist president, he was a terrible president. I mean, just coronavirus, do you remember this?
How's he going to win again?
He's going to win because you love this narrative.
Coronavirus is your example for how he was a terrible president. A literally unprecedented nationwide pandemic is your example for how he was a terrible president. And a pandemic that was not alleviated once Mr. Joe Schmo Biden ended up being in office. So how is that a prime example for how he's not a good president? And to think that, like, he didn't do anything for black people. He did a lot for black people. The economy was doing much better. Black people had more jobs. And he was talking to black people, unlike whatever the president we currently have is doing. I don't know where they get this idea that he is racist from. I don't know if it's because of his talks about illegal immigration, maybe something there. I'm not seeing it. Got to be honest.
Because he plays on racism. Make America great.
But how do you explain it? But you can keep calling him a racist, but how do you explain 500% increase in support from American
like I said,
black voters?
I am very doubtful that will actually translate. And also, sadly,
Can you explain it? You're a professor. Can you explain it?
Partly that's about Biden is terrible. I think we can all agree Biden is terrible. Another example of just put mediocre white man, Biden is terrible.
It's also
and I think people are frustrated. And
there are millions, according to this.
Not only that, your ideology is the problem because you're the one labeling black people as victims while also doing nothing for them. The left in America is saying black people can't get voter ID. They don't even know how to identify themselves to vote. I don't know if they even know how to turn their phones on to register to vote. On top of that, they're not solving the border. They're allowing millions of people into this country. They're not tough on crime. They're trying to defund the police. They're not doing anything for black people. And they're not bringing new jobs to the United States. Nothing is going well for black America under left-leaning leadership. And if you think black people don't notice that or they're not waking up to that, then you, quite frankly, have a poor view of blackness.
Poll, there are now millions more black people in America who are gravitating to someone you believe is a terrible racist.
Trump's appeal to black people is, we're going to make some sneakers. I'm going to do AI. It actually has to have AI images of him with black people because that's how few black people he knows. I mean, this is somebody who's all about.
I don't think that's true, you see.
It's somehow. Look, if people are being deluded by this, that's a shame. I can't say anything other than that's a shame. But this is not just because
James
a few black people like him,
millions of black Americans are deluded.
A few black people like him doesn't mean
I wouldn't have used that phrase.
I'm not sure that's what Kahindi
literally said. Yeah.
I don't
Well, he
know
implied
exactly
it.
what
let me
Kahindi
be
said,
very clear. If millions of black people vote for Trump, they will be deluded.
Okay. So, Kahindi.
You heard it. You heard it. So, like, all, the half of America that is probably going to vote for this man, just deluded, and especially the black ones.
Andrew says black Americans are deluded. I'll come to a mark in a moment.
Ridiculous.
But James, how do you explain it? I mean, this guy's supposed to be a racist, and yet black people are flocking to support him.
Honestly, I can't speak for black people, Piers. I know you can, but I can't.
You speak to trans people.
You were totally fine to speak for black people when you said we needed safe spaces at the theater. So I'm really confused as to how you can't speak for them now. You were totally fine to speak for black people when we were talking about Meghan Markle and the racism that she faced in the royal family. I don't know why you're not able to speak for them now. You were totally fine to speak about black people when we were getting into reparations and saying that we deserve reparations for the generational trauma that was bestowed upon us by our governments. But you're not okay to speak for black people now. Interesting.
The queer community, so I support them, of course.
You're not trans, you're not in their
community. You know what? Let's just not get that. Let's not do that again. My opinion is that Trump is an entertainer and he is using his narcissism. His entire career as an entertainer has been in the spotlight. He knows how to win audiences over, regardless of his policies. But what upsets me so much is that he's responsible for that huge Capitol riots and worse, and says just so many stupid things. He forgot his own wife's name. If we're going to talk about dementia,
Joe Biden can't even remember his own name.
Oh, and this tired old, we're going to accuse him of having dementia because Joe Biden so clearly has it. I'm over it. Bill Maher did it. This guy's doing it. Trump does not have dementia. So don't try to back off from what is clearly a senile president that we currently have by accusing him of somehow being senile as well.
Trump is also having aging
he can't remember his own name.
So it's not easy. It's not as simple as that. So I think what upsets me is that we've got two presidential candidates that aren't good enough, basically. That's the real issue.
All right, Amala, I mean, I found that poll fascinating in the New York Times. Why is it, do you think, that black voters are turning in big numbers comparative to 4 years ago to Trump?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it is not because we are deluded, and that's quite frankly an insulting thing to say about Black Americans who would choose to vote for somebody like Donald Trump. The real reality is that Black Americans are becoming educated and they are facing issues within the United States that they want to see solved. Like I said, illegal immigration, crime is skyrocketing. The left is running on this whole defund the police movement and telling Black people that they're perpetual victims in America whilst simultaneously doing nothing for them. Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black.
Yeah.
But somehow Donald Trump is the racist. People are realizing this. Black America is waking up and they're looking for a candidate who's actually going to solve the real world problems that they are facing in their community rather than telling them that they're perpetual victims of racism while doing nothing for them.
Yeah, so they're all like, oh, we feel unsafe, we feel racism, we feel. That's a lot different from like millions of illegal immigrants passing your southern border and bringing fentanyl into the country where people are overdosing and dying at an alarming rate. It's a lot different than left-leaning policies that are soft on crime, and we have smash and grab robberies, people being burglarized, people being killed in our streets, and the police being demoralized to the point where really nothing is happening. Plus, you have an entire side of the political aisle that is saying you're not capable of getting voter ID, you're not really educated, you ain't Black if you don't vote for us. Plus, we're gonna try to like defund your police and do absolutely nothing for you. The economy is abysmal. Meanwhile, we're spending billions and billions of dollars sending that to Ukraine and Israel, things that have nothing to do with us. And they think Black people don't recognize this and they don't see that this is happening, that they don't feel this in their daily lives living in this country, that we're somehow some like lower tier individual that is not capable of computing what's happening right in front of us. That's why you're seeing a 500% increase in people wanting to vote for somebody like Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with, sneakers and racism and being delusional. It has everything to do with real life problems that we, just like every other community, can recognize are happening because we're not dumb.
It's perfectly fine to say, look, Biden isn't great, and because you have a two system, it's terrible, and some people vote for him. But if you actually think that anything in Trump's platform is going to help Black people, that is a delusion. Because he doesn't promise it, he's never argued it, and he's not going to do it.
Well,
and his platform is frankly racist. The Capitol riots, white supremacy.
If he fixes crime and he fixes the southern border issue and the fentanyl crisis and other things, if he does those things, he will directly improve the lives of many Black Americans. That's why they gravitate.
If you do that by mass incarceration and putting more Black people in prison, that doesn't actually benefit us at all.
You know the truth?
That's the problem.
Obama, here's my favourite question. Do you know how many illegal immigrants Obama deported in 8 years?
I agree. Obama was terrible too.
And I wouldn't argue that that's all that terrible, especially given the state of our country right now. I don't know if that's a knock on Obama's presidency. There's plenty other things you could go after him for, maybe like drone strikes in the Middle East, but deportation, probably not.
You're not going to
So
catch me.
America's only Black president was terrible.
I didn't like Obama.
Wow, so you've hammered American Black voters and the American Black president. Wow, on that bombshell.
Just because they're Black,
On that
I don't
bombshell,
have to like them.
the greatest attacker of Black Americans in history, Henry Andrews.
Wow.
Thank you very much indeed, Ian.
I don't have to say
Thanks,
that.
Mark. Always good to see you with the Ku Klux Klan. And Amala, what a lovely breath of fresh air you were today. So you can come back anytime. Amala Ekinadu, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Joining us from across the pond. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That was a fun time, guys. So yeah, that was my morning. I was stressed and pressed, y'all. I was stressed and pressed, but I'm glad that it went well. I feel like when I do things like this, I totally black out, to be quite frank with you. I don't know if it's like an anxiety thing or an adrenaline thing, but I'm like totally blacked out, and then I come out of it and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll have to see what the clip looks like in like 3 hours from now or something like that. I have no idea. I had a general feeling that this went well. So I'm glad that it's resonating and it's out there, and this was a fun thing to do for once. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Piers was hyping you up in the middle of the interview and then called you a breath of fresh air at the end. So he clearly
that's so nice.
loved having you. So you had to feel good at least about that. But yeah, I get it. You get tunnel vision, you get in that deep focus mode, but you were spitting that entire time, and the chat was going nuts every time you'd dunk on one of them. So I think you handled yourself quite well, and I would be very surprised if you didn't want you back.
Thanks, Taylor. And now, guys, we're going to get into your super chats. Let's hear from you. I've talked enough today.
All right, and you guys keep hyping Amala up in the chat so she knows.
Thanks, guys.
Let's see. Starting us off today is Must Love Horror Films. Says voters in San Francisco passed a bill to fund the police and give them more power and resources. People are waking up. I'm more hopeful now. As a gay conservative, I see a lot more people open.
Yeah, I did see that. There was like two generally conservative propositions that were put through today on behalf of people in San Francisco because they're feeling what's going on right now. These problems are unsustainable. So people either wake up or they feel the true weight of just how horrible things are going to be. And hopefully it's the former and not the latter.
Yeah, I saw they like unseated a bunch of their council members and stuff. But it's like, hopefully, if the state of that city does not wake you up, like nothing will.
Right, right.
But I hate that, you know, if how bad it got there is how bad it'll have to get nationwide, then we're in for a rough ride before we hit rock bottom. But who knows? Hope springs eternal. Amy Love says, hey, Amala and Taylor, it's my birthday today and would love for Amala to wish me a happy birthday. Thanks.
Happy birthday. Hope you're having a fantastic day.
Yeah, happy birthday. Kwazakule says, hey guys, Amala, do you ever wonder if you never change your political ways that you would have never met so many people and me? Fate, probably. Love y'all.
Yeah, no, of course, I think about it all the time. What an interesting trajectory my life is on and has been on. And I've met so many wonderful people and had so many just crazy, just wonderful life opportunities from having adopted something that just has made my life so much better. So yeah, I'm eternally grateful for having some sort of wake up call long ago.
Yeah, it feels like long ago now, huh?
Yeah.
Hasn't been that long, but
Yeah.
Dalton says, Amala and Taylor, and on emoji, top emoji. For real. What are your favorite songs at the moment?
Ooh, you guys know I love the 1975, so I'm always listening to the 1975. There's a song called Built for Love by PJ Morton. That's kind of more of an R&B vibe that you guys should listen to. And yeah, other than that, I'd say that's my recommendation. We went through Kanye's new album, Vultures. I didn't really like it all that much. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. It wasn't that good. But yeah, I always recommend the 1975.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I don't think I can even answer this.
He's not a big music guy.
Yeah, most of the time I'm listening to podcasts. When I do listen to music, it's usually like some kind of lo-fi or like, I don't know, I have a playlist on Spotify called Nordic Chill. It's like these like beats that are, I don't know, it helped me focus when I'm working and editing and stuff like that.
I cannot work out listening to podcasts. It is hardcore rap all day. All day when I work out.
Every now and then I'm like, no, I want to listen to some more like hypey music. Yeah. I listened to freaking Creed the other day at the gym.
That's so funny.
I don't remember why, but something reminded me of like 2000s rock. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to listen to freaking old school 1999 Creed Human Clay album.
Nothing wrong with that.
It rocked out. Taylor Fan Club says, if the royal family should apologize for the benefits of slavery, all modern Americans have to as well.
Yep.
And we're benefiting from country that only became that way because of its past.
Dude, we all benefit from slavery. We all benefit from transgressions of the past because that's the way that history works. Like if something bad happened and then success is born out of that bad thing, we've all benefited from it by virtue of just living in the modern age. So it's just such a ridiculous assertion that we should have to apologize in any way, shape, or form for things we didn't do. It's like, are we going to say like, you need to apologize because your granddaddy slapped my granddaddy in the 5th grade one time? No, of course we wouldn't do that because we're not responsible for what our granddaddies did.
Something dude says, it's so good to see someone like you on Piers. The other conservatives he has had on recently are about as bright as the lighting in a dark room or a dark room.
I don't really watch Piers Morgan all that much. Like I see clips and stuff on YouTube. So I didn't know exactly what I was going to be stepping into, but this did not disappoint. I was so nervous that I'm like, okay, straight into the hot water with like, I didn't mention this. I thought I was just going to be debating the Black studies professor. So I was under the impression that it was me, Piers, and then him. And then it ended up being the four of us, which actually made it a little bit more fun. It was nice to have multiple people to bounce off of. And I only thought I only had those two topics, and then right before we hopped on the call, they were like, "Oh, we added this topic, this one," and I'm like, "Oh shoot, okay, here we go."
Yeah, you always got to be on your game.
You got to stay on your toes for real. They'll just add topics on you out of nowhere.
Joy says how some have had the audacity to use their voices to demand reparations for those who have never been enslaved, while people, particularly kids, are currently enslaved in the sex trade. Makes me see red.
Yeah, more slaves now than there was during the transatlantic slave trade. And I can understand that slavery had an impact on people, and it's an impact that is still felt to this day, but not to the tune of, billions and trillions of dollars. Y'all need to chill.
Ali P. Kaplis says, as an Irish person, I do think they should do some sort of apology, but not reparations, as there is a lot of discrimination up north towards Irish.
I would just say, what good does an apology do you? You get an what does that mean to you, to get an apology from somebody who didn't do something to you? To apologize on behalf of somebody who isn't alive to do that really doesn't help the situation in any way, shape, or form. It would really be something to do to make people, I guess, feel better. But that feeling of feeling better because you were apologized to doesn't mean anything, because you weren't apologized to from the actual perpetrator of the crime. So it is somewhat, by definition, kind of a pointless thing to do, but we still continue to have conversations about it. And it's just crazy that these overtake conversations about real problems that people are facing today that need, something done about them.
Yeah, it fails on the merits, and also when you grant them the apology that they're looking for, you're accepting their premise and you're accepting their framing of these issues, and then the whole worldview that comes with that, with the oppressor oppressed narrative, and we can blame white people. It's just like you're just opening up a can with that. I think rejecting the whole premise in the first place keeps the discussion in reality, and you're better off not granting. Leon says, "Hey, Amal and Taylor, I hope your week's been good. I just want to thank you for being a source and light during these crappy times. You two mean a lot to me."
Thank you. That is so very sweet. Oh, you guys mean a lot to me too. That's so nice.
Yeah, I love how everyone comes around and like, "Oh yeah, Amal's on Piers Morgan. We gotta come and represent." And
yeah, we gotta come hang out.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
Lorraine Grubb says, "Money will not make up for slavery. Consider lottery winners. Most end up in debt. The money would be better spent teaching inner city kids marketable skills and offer job support to those in poverty." Yeah,
and that it should be a class thing and a resource thing. It should have nothing to do with race. You should just go to people who are experiencing or who are underprivileged due to class and resources and help them. And that could be anybody of any race.
Let's see. Devin Frame says, "Congratulations, Mamala. You have become the second content creator to enter my head. Whenever I hear to each their own, I say in my head, Charlize Theron."
There we go.
The first was Destiny. I say no shot a lot now. That must be one of his things.
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
To each their own, Charlize Theron.
Let's see. Mustika BM says, "According to woke ideology, even Finland is responsible for slavery because we did business with countries like the UK during slavery. It's crazy."
Yeah, I mean, and why stop at slavery? There's a ton of other crimes committed, humanitarian crimes committed against people all throughout human history. Why stop there? And how far back in history can we go? Like we said, we all have claims. So we can just all find claims for reparations and have them cancel each other out. And then we could be done with the conversation, maybe.
Julia Prezzo says, "If it's in the past, maybe get rid of royalty and give back stolen stuff. Why do they still have a royal family?"
Yeah, I'm not necessarily a pro-monarchy individual. I want to make that very clear. To me, it makes very little sense that like a family just gets to keep a powerful lineage by virtue of being a family. That does not land too well with me just from a logical standpoint, but it doesn't speak to the fact that they should somehow pay reparations or give back stolen land of any kind. I think that's a separate sort of thought experiment.
Anisha says, without colonialism, I would not be born in Holland, but in a village in India with a lot less freedom, safety, and options. I think I'll pass on that.
Exactly. That's the part that you're apparently not allowed to say, that colonialism brought about a lot of good, even though it committed a lot of bad.
Oaxaca says, hello, hola, Amal and Taylor. Here's an idea. Just pay it one time payment per person. As minorities, many of us don't know how to invest, save, plan for the future. The royal fam and government will recover that money in months.
Yeah, that's, it would just be funneled straight back into the economy on a bunch of pointless things, I bet, if you did give people a bunch of fat checks, which is why, to some extent, I'm like, if they're successful with reparations, just watch them do it and watch it fail, honestly, right before our eyes. We hope that's not the case, but I feel like that's what would happen.
Yeah, that stings. It's still too fresh when we printed $1,200 for everybody, and now our groceries are twice as expensive for the rest of our lives, if not more, and everything else.
Nobody talks about the effect that would have on the economy. It's just insane.
Well, yeah, some people did, but they were not listened to.
Yeah, right.
Alas. Zelda Zaz says, why is everything black versus white? Latino, Asians, Middle Eastern. We are all ignored because black issues are more important.
Yep. I don't know why black people get this like special pedestal in every place that is having these discussions. It's a very valid question to ask yourself. And it's because people don't feel bad for Asians or Hispanics. They just don't. They don't pity them. So that's why black people bear the burden of being part of these conversations.
Celtic Blacksmith says, the minute I see the checks clear for massive nationwide reparations, I'll quit my job, get into the repo business, and just wait. The money will all flow.
Yeah, that's something that don't want to say out loud. But if you did that, you know how many Bugattis and Lambos are going to be bought the next day. It's just due to the sheer lack of financial literacy, not just within the black community, but all over the United States.
Nerd Dial says, I find it interesting how segregation is different now, not of skin, but of class. I lived in the ghetto, but went to a nice school across town and was constantly bullied by students and teachers for it.
Wait, what was the first part?
I finds it interesting how, hold on, I just refreshed. The discrimination is now just not on race, but on class.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's
segregation.
Yeah, I think most of this is like a greater point to be made is that a lot of this is a class struggle and not really anything to do with race. And if you focused on the fact that this is a class and resource struggle, you'd probably make a far more headway than you do separating people on the basis of being white or black. And we're really missing the mark there.
Mystica again says that the idea of safe places for different races is ridiculous. It affects families and friendships, as if blacks and whites don't interact with each other.
Yeah, it's dumb. It makes absolutely no sense. We should all be able to live together in one society, as that is what the West is largely about. So to do this flies in the face of Western values.
Ket says, hello again from the UK. The woke stuff is happening more here, getting crazy as America. I saw a job opportunity. They stated they prioritize POC in hiring. Everybody should have a fair chance.
Yep, it should be. We should move towards colorblindness and race neutrality, but people are not allowing that to happen. It's because they want to play this victim card that we got to witness so much throughout that episode that we just watched. It's really, really unfortunate to see, because I just don't know how we get out of what we're experiencing right now.
Well, I feel like we're a few inches closer after your performance in that debate.
I don't know. Hopefully it reached the right ears. I have no clue.
Drama Forever says, from a gay, I feel more in danger when around other queer people or quote unquote allies, because but only because you can feel the animosity when you have a disagreement about something they deem important or sensitive.
Yeah, hive mind is a real deal thing, and surrounding yourself by people who identify as you or like share your same ideology does create an echo chamber. And, echo chambers don't like dissonant voices. They don't like somebody who fucks with the echo, okay? So you will get kicked out of the echo chamber, and it doesn't make you inherently safe.
Yeah, it's like fundamentalist, puritanical, religious type thinking, basically. Gina Leon just sends a thank you emoji, a little dancing pear or something. That's cool. Thank you, Gina.
Cool. Take it.
Julia Presso again says, it isn't that giving back stolen items is going to solve problems of the formerly colonized. Simply, why is there still a royal family in this era?
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid question. I think it's a question that's actually gripping much of the United Kingdom, and people are grappling with the idea of monarchy and whether or not it's a sort of outdated premise. As I said, I lean softly on the idea that it is an outdated premise, but I don't know all that much about the royal family, as it's not something that I tend to concern myself with all that much. But in thinking about it, it doesn't make much sense to me, but I can understand, as it is like a pillar of the West, it's a pillar of tradition, and it's something that's highly revered, why it's stuck around for so long, and why the general population might not be too keen on getting rid of something like the royal family, because I think to them it does represent the destruction of Western values and maybe a pillar of tradition.
Oaxaca again says, I attended a Madonna concert this week. A great number of people there were gay. I am a straight man. Should I have screamed, where are the straight people? Where has the common sense gone?
You should pull what is it, Jennifer Coolidge in White Lotus? The gays, they're trying to kill me. Apparently that's what's going on, guys. If you're in a room of people who are unlike you, they want you dead and it's unsafe.
Just Put Me in the Matrix says, hey there, A and Tay. This won't pertain at all to today's video, but I saw this girl on Instagram with and without makeup. Let's just keep it at 1,000. That is false advertisement, which is a crime. LOL.
Well, yeah, I think it depends. There's varying degrees of makeup application. Some people can really catfish you on with their makeup application.
If it's her own Instagram and she's showing both, though, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
AVJR says, I was at a crossover thrash concert to see Municipal Waste last night. There were mixed race people, moshed, and we had fun. Even it was Super Tuesday, the band didn't talk about politics. Metal. And then he sent a little metal emoji.
Yeah, I mean, dude, what I can't wait for, and I don't know if I'm going to live to see, is that with the way that humans are like getting into relationships and creating children and stuff like that, soon there is not going to be deviations amongst race. We are all going to look like me, essentially. We're all going to have my skin color, and that's what humans are just going to look like, because we're mixing and creating interracial relationships and all these different things. What are you going to complain about then? We're all going to be literally the same race, and it's because we are finding love with one another that spans, race and doesn't take race into account. So who's going to be able to complain and call for reparations then? Nobody. And honestly, we'll wait and see. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, but that's just the way things are going to go. And if we still have these problems somehow, I don't know how.
Well, we're fighting like hell to keep the racism and segregation stuff alive, as the great Tom Sowell says, keeping it on life support.
Alice said, so in 200 years, we're all going to slay. Yeah, 200 years, Alice.
Ali Love says, I love people. I do not want to be separated. Separating people by race in theater is a sin. Theater lovers know it is one of the few spaces that we can all be vulnerable and together. This alone makes it a safe space. Sick minds.
100%. It's like so awesome to go to the theater and be around so many different people of different ages and like families and couples and all this stuff, and just like see a show and experience something wonderful just for the sheer sake of art. It's like a wonderful, beautiful thing where people have just spent their time to create a piece of art for other people that hopefully resonates with them. And to make that about race sucks. It actually sucks.
Must Love Horror Film says, I would not feel safer only around other gay people. My friends are straight men. They know I don't push woke nonsense, nor will I cower from homophobia. My boyfriend is a Marine and gets respect just the same. We don't need pity.
Yep. It's just like, we have a saying, just because you skin folk don't mean you kin folk. It's exactly that. Just because we look the same does not mean we are kin in any way, shape, or form. Just because we have the same sexuality does not mean we are kin.
Celtic Blacksmith says, I think my super chats are being censored, so if this one goes through, my suspicions will be confirmed. Amla looking gorgeous as always, darling.
Uh-oh, sorry, I hope not. I wonder why they would be censoring your super chats.
The YouTube conspiracy against us. SKH Writer says the craziest thing about this debate was that it was three men yelling at each other while you sat back rolling your eyes. Brilliant as always, girl.
Yeah, it's so funny. It was funny, a little frustrating to be able to watch, as you guys know, but I think at least it turned out pretty good.
Wind says, hello, Amala. I've been watching your videos since 2021, and this is my first super chat. I love your take on everything. Kind of annoyed about those two woke leftists' point of view, though.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and thank you for your support and being a first-time super chatter. Yeah, it was fun. I like what I do, and I love being able to contend with people who disagree. So this is like bread and butter. My bread and butter.
Caravan Carolyn says, back the blue, y'all.
Back the blue. I agree
better
with
than
you.
Defunding them.
Yes, much better than defunding them.
O'Reilly says, Amla, you did fine. It's just fine. Come on,
Just
one
fine.
day
I'll
you'll
take
understand. Yeah, one day you'll understand Christianity, but regardless, I support you.
Okay. You know that
Way to make it weird.
one can hope. I don't know about that. You'll have to check back in on that. Don't hold your breath, though. Sorry.
Moggy the antagonist says Trump was originally accused of racism because of the full-page ad he took out calling for a capital punishment of the Central Park Five.
Okay. Well, I don't know what that has to do with race. I don't know that has anything to do with them specifically being black, and maybe has more to do with the actual crime that was committed, or his perception of the crime that had been committed. As we all know, that didn't pan out in the way that people initially thought. So I think people make things about race when more often than not, it's really not about race.
William Joyce says, what are your thoughts on the establishment of a new political party / the need for a legit three-party system?
I don't know how I feel about, I'm not too fond of the two-party system, let alone the three-party system. And I think about like the fact that our founding fathers really, really told us, we're like, don't go into this two-party altercation that is going to bind you guys for the rest of America's existence. I don't know that three parties alleviates it. At least it adds a little bit of variety, but I imagine a third party would just split one of the two parties' votes. So it's kind of difficult. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I wish there was some way we could have some sort of like label-less election system where it doesn't turn into this tribal back and forth between two parts of the aisle, and you just get a candidate, you get how he feels about certain issues, no label, no D, no R, and people just vote for what makes the most sense on the issues. And it's unfortunate that we're in this two-party thing that is not working out for us.
Yeah, I like some other countries like France have multiple parties, and then whichever one get the most votes, they do a runoff, and it's between them. And
Australia's doing that too.
At least forces a little bit more nuance and get you exposure to different ideas and platforms and stuff, even if you do end up having to have a final vote be two parties. But it just feels like we're so entrenched in our current ways here in America that
I don't know how we dig ourselves out of that. Yeah.
But crazy things have happened in history, in recent history. So who knows? Dr. Gold says, I'm 20 and my generation is going crazy, and the normal ones need to stand up and fight. And love to you both.
Oh, yeah. I think it's just we need to be more vocal. Just not be afraid to talk about these issues. That's the one thing. So many people are scared. Just like say it. It doesn't matter. You're not gonna get killed because you say something yet. I know people are getting jailed and stuff. I just saw some guy in Ireland or something get put in jail, I guess, for putting stickers out that were deemed to be offensive. So, but if you don't fight now, it's going to be much worse. You're going to have much worse things to contend with. So you might as well, start fighting now so that you don't have to wait till things get worse and worse and worse to begin.
Celtic Blacksmith again says, General Epinobi, couple music recommendations for you. Darkness, the live version, and Shelter Me, both by Tab Benoit.
Okay, putting it down. I've got your recommendation.
All righty. Thanks, Mr. Blacksmith. The Nicodemus 1984, another regular, says, the most astonishing thing is that you, a young woman in her 20s, is the one speaking calmly and maintaining a clear and concise discourse in front of two people completely overwhelmed by emotions.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know at the other end of it whether or not I actually did come off as calm, because I could feel myself in frustration speaking, and I did regret that a bit. I think I could have remained calmer throughout this situation. But yeah, there is something to be said for the fact that those were two grown men who I'm sure are much older than I am, making these arguments.
The comments on that video on YouTube are great, by the way. It's linked in the chat if you guys want to go see it. But a lot of love for all the love, man. This is a hard name. Anamiki Hilarious says, you always know what to say, and it is so true. I love you so much. You're amazing. We need more people like you.
You're so sweet. That is so nice. Guys, you guys are too sweet. So that is so very, very kind. Thank you.
Wynn says, also, isn't the UK responsible to pay for reparations for the whole world since they used to colonize nearly half the world?
Oh, yeah, dude. There's a lot. History spans very, very far amongst many nations. And if we're worried about, what happened in Africa and the slave trade or whatever, just wait till you hear what China's doing to Africa right now. They're going to be never paying their reparations because the CCP does not care. Let's make that clear.
Sup, my dude? Again says, the conservatives I was referencing before on Piers were Chaya Reichik and some dude named Tyrus. They're about as eloquent as a bowl of broccoli.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I should say this. I did see a TikTok of, I think, because Chaya Reichik, she's the libs of TikTok. She runs the libs of TikTok Twitter, and she was confronted by Taylor Lorenz about trans ideology, and then Taylor posted that on TikTok, and it ended up going viral. And I don't think she was ready at all to defend her beliefs, which is, it's a really important thing, and it's an unfortunate thing when you feel like somebody is not the proper advocate for your beliefs, but they only advocate on behalf of themselves at the end of the day. And I'm sure maybe it was a lesson learned. I haven't seen her on Piers Morgan though, but yeah, you have to really armor yourself, which it gives me anxiety to think about doing shows like this, because I'm like, you are not going to catch me slipping. I'm training like a Jedi in my brain of what are all the possible things that you could respond to this and respond to this, and mapping out how that works, how to get your response in a perfect amount of time. There's so many different pressures that you have to think of when you're specifically being interviewed. So, I mean, my heart goes out to her of that, it's thrown to you, you're virtual, there's a lag, you have to think about the arguments that you're making plus what they're saying plus what they're going to say after you, and you have to account for that and then answer in less than a minute and get it out and make sure it's eloquent and make sure it makes sense to an audience member who has no idea what you're talking about, so you have to simplify it. There's a million things going on in your brain, and then they just throw it over to you and go, okay, go answer the question, all without knowing what the question is going to be. It's tough. It's tough. So I feel for her.
Yeah, it pushes you to your limit, but you've been up for the task. I remember you were giving a speech somewhere, and there was going to be Q&A after, and you were going in your mind before about what could they come back at me with, and there was some obscure argument about black women and maternity or something, and you thought of it and you looked up some stuff to get it, process your own thoughts about it, and then somebody ended up asking about that very thing.
Yes.
Almost as soon as the Q&A started. Remember that?
Yes. I was talking to Taylor, because Taylor comes along with me on some of these trips sometimes, or at least did in the past. And right before I was going out to give my speech, I look over my notes. I'm very meticulous about that. And I'm like, you know what? There's one question that I want to be fully armored to answer, because I haven't looked into the stuff on that in a long time. And it was that a lot of people complain that black women die more when they're pregnant and when they're giving birth, and that's somehow the product of racism. So I literally immediately Googled it, started reading as much as I could about the issue, and I got through my speech. It was probably 30 minutes to an hour or something like that. And the very first question, this kid comes up and he's like, an example of racism that I have is the black maternal mortality rate. And I was like, whoo, your girl, she caught that. Because Yeah, that would have been an interesting time had I not thought about that being a question.
Yeah, that was like a serendipity. But
It
yeah, you
really
said they're not
was.
going to catch you slipping. So it's
Ain't go
true
catch
so
me
far.
slipping. Ain't go catch me.
Gal Pal Val says, I have to know, your shirt is super cute. Who made it?
I think H&M. I don't know. It's old. I think H&M made this. It's a dress, by the way. It's a bodycon dress.
Whatever that means. Nick Brown says, the woke SJW movement is an overcorrection of past sins. In a way, they are creating more of the ist and phobes they claim to want to defeat.
100%. And that's something that we didn't get into in the reparations argument. And one thing that I kicked myself for not saying is that if you think you've seen racism in the United States as of 2024, just wait to see the amount of racism you will see when you pay reparations specifically to Black people. The amount of racial animosity that is going to be fueled in this country if we decide to go down that route will be nothing you've ever seen before, and nothing that you have experienced. And that point, unfortunately, was not made.
Ryan Little Eagle says, I'm late, so watching everything from the beginning. When reparations are discussed, why are African nations that participated why aren't they ever called on for
You're right.
reparations?
Ding, ding, ding. That's the literal root of the supply chain. There would have been no transatlantic slave trade if there weren't African nations willing to sell the Africans off to the British colonies. So, why are we not talking about that? I don't know.
That's too much nuance in the facts of the matter. You just have to see white people over here, Black people over here.
White people bad,
One good,
Black
one
people
bad,
good.
you know.
Pay money.
Just put me in the matrix again. It says, please keep on hiring people based on their skin color so that I can sue for millions of dollars, win, and then buy that trad wife spotter so I can live happily ever after, LOL, saving up for those Apple Vision Pros.
Yeah, if they ever allow a civil rights movement in that direction, I don't think they'll ever allow white people to gain back what they've lost over the last decade with this woke BS.
There's like a whole exchange happening now. Alex also says to Celtic Blacksmith, stop simping on Amla. She doesn't need the attention or validation. Get them Apple Vision Pros instead, coming to a reality near you.
Oh my gosh.
And then Celtic Blacksmith says, these are super chats, by the way. We're getting into some drama. Alex says, Celtic says, Alex, I'm going to simp so hard for Amla now you don't even know. Don't underestimate my pettiness. I grew up with 3 older brothers. I fear nothing.
Oh gosh, you've started a simp war. It's back and forth.
Oh my gosh.
A battle of the petties. A battle of the petties. We'll see what happens. Tune back in next saga, guys. For this
We've had fan club wars.
super chat war.
Simp armies.
Yeah. Wow.
Geez.
We're developing lore for this channel.
Manny Petty says, my internet was so spotty, I'm a bit behind. I just wanted to say I've been telling my mom about you and she loves you guys now too.
Aw, that is so awesome. Yeah, I read a comment the other day that somebody said they watch the show with their like 84-year-old mom and they sit and talk about the topics. Makes my heart so happy. If you guys are watching this with your family and having little conversations, I love that for you and I love that for me.
Bria Eisen says, not the who you vote for becomes your personality and morals again. As a Trump voter in customer service, bracing for all the hate I'll get, you don't know me.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, it used to be, you just voted for somebody. Guys, it's not that, don't stress. It's not that big of a deal. I voted for who I think is the best for this country. It doesn't speak to like your moral integrity or, like all these deeper set issues that people are trying to make it out to be. I made an assessment as to what I feel like is best for the nation I live in, and I voted in that direction. It's really as simple as that.
Andrew Velasquez, and I think this is our last one, says, a huge fan of you, Amala. You and I agree on much, but not immigration. I work in the field and would love to clarify or chat with you about it.
Yeah, I mean, let me give just a baseline. I'm not going to get too deep into this, my views on immigration. I do think we should have a great route for people who want to come in this country, work, enjoy the opportunities of this country to do exactly that. But that route needs to be not the easiest thing in the world. I'm all for people immigrating to the United States, coming to work here, coming to build their families here, coming to contribute to this country. What I am not for is people just being able to enter the border really frivolously and to the tune of millions. And that's not going to affect our country positively. We don't have a track for letting people who need to be here or want to be here and are going to be, lawful citizens to get in here. We do. That's the thing. So we can work on it. We can reform it. That's totally something, a conversation that I'm willing to entertain, but not whilst we are just allowing anybody and their mother, brother, and sister to enter this country illegally. You have to, get a handle on the border before we get into talks of reform of our immigration system. My boyfriend is an immigrant, and he just became a U.S. citizen, and that was a very difficult process that involved visas and green card lotteries and applying for citizenship and the citizenship test and all of these different things. And to think that he has to go through this entire process and that other people are just coming through the border and now just get to enjoy the United States it just doesn't work for me. And the same can be said for my Nigerian family as well. A ton of immigrants in my family who came to this country and went through the legal channels in order to do so.
Yeah, and I have my brother-in-law is originally Brazilian, but he's got his citizenship, and my sister-in-law is Panamanian, and she just got her citizenship. And it's a beautiful thing. We celebrate
Awesome.
that, but
Yeah.
it's just the crazy illegal influx that we've had. We have decent laws too; they're just not being enforced. So there's something to be said for that as well.
Yeah.
One more at the buzzer here from Sugar Cookie says. Chaya Kyle was on Piers the other day, and Crazy Ava said she needed to mind her business.
Crazy Ava. I don't know who Crazy Ava is. I'll have to look into that. I'll have to go watch this this Piers Morgan interview that you're all talking about. Maybe I'll do it after the show. With that being said, it's about to be after the show, guys. Thank you so much for watching today's show. I hope you had a fun time. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know how you feel about all the different topics we discussed. If you disagree with anything I said, duke it out, but do so respectfully. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we're live. That's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. Plus, we post videos for you guys every single day. Tomorrow's video is me talking about Dune 2 and whether or not it is truly a white savior story. So keep an eye out for that. And with that, I bid you guys adieu. Bye.